Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Dan and Joe Sports Show. As always, I'm Dan,
And I'm Joe.
and we're joined by our good friend of the show and sponsor and new local celebrity, Hunter Harrelson. Hunter, glad to have you with us today.
Glad to be here tonight, riding on a high tonight.
I know, man. You got that new jewelry. You got Alabama's got a new jewelry with SEC champions, and we're gonna have you talk about both those things. And meanwhile, I'm hoping that they leave Wendell Green in Tuscaloosa because I knew it. 20 seconds left. I'm like, he is going to dribble this every last second of it and then take a stupid shot at the end that has zero chance of going in. And it was exactly what happened. It's what happens in every single game that gets down to the end when Auburn's within one possession. I mean, it's just it's
watching watching that game, I didn't feel like Auburn's a 19-11 team. I mean, they're I hate to say it, they're the best 19-11 team in the country. I mean, they play tough. They just, from what little bit I caught of them, like stupid games like the Kentucky game, you just wonder, how did that happen? And of course, Bama too. I've seen Bama slip up on a game and just get drilled, and then come back the next game and score like record points. And I'm just like, what team is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's a couple things this Auburn team doesn't have, and free throw shooting is a big one. I mean, you look at Alabama versus Auburn in this game tonight. Alabama was like 25 of 28 from the line, and Auburn, meanwhile, was like 13 of 24 or something like that. I mean, that decides games, and that's why you make it to overtime. And that's a problem I've seen with a lot of Bruce Pearl teams. He very rarely does Auburn have a very solid free throw shooting team with him. I think the one time they made the Final Four was, through no coincidence of its own, the one time that they, had a really good free throw shooting team.
And it makes you sick at the end of a game to look at those free throws and go, yeah, we lost by 5 and left 12 free points on the board or 11 free points. You're like, man, this is pretty bad.
Yeah, well, and then you look at KD Johnson twice during the game, missing both of them back to back. And I was just like, man, you're like a senior too. This should not be happening.
I know. It's got to be tough, but we'll get into more of it too. But just as Alabama, just as this team finding ways to win, even when the three ball, live by the sword, die by the sword's cold, we still find players like Bradley, a true freshman, coming out of the woodwork and making points right there at the end. So it's a special team this year. Definitely a lot better than the team a couple of years ago with Herb Jones and Petty and all them.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed about this Alabama team is you got different guys like show up at different times. And tonight it was Javon Quinterly who really made the difference in this game. And I've been kind of wondering throughout the entire season. I mean, I don't watch Alabama all the time, but I catch glimpses of them. And Quinterly seems like he's had a very off season compared to what he's had the first 3 years he was in T-Town. And this is the first game where I saw him where he looks like what I expected him to be.
Right. And a lot of people forgot, he tore his ACL last year and, came back very quickly. Some people were surprised he even was back by the beginning of the season. And he had some spurts early in the season that people were like, oh, Q's back, man, nothing to it. And then there was a lull kind of towards the middle, back in third quarter of the season that, my brother was texting me, cussing him, like, get him out of the game. Like, he's just not, but these last 3 games, he's balled out, and I mean, hopefully this is the right time to peak. I mean, getting into tournament season, it's March.
Absolutely. Speaking of the tournament season, Hunter, do you think that with everything surrounding Alabama, they will get the number 1 overall seed? I would say they deserve it personally, but I'm interested to see whether it happens.
I think they do. I mean, all of our top tier. I mean, if you just look at our resume, we barely have any tier 4 wins. Mostly everything's tier 1, tier 2. I mean, the win on the road at Houston, beating the power of Kentucky, sweeping, most everybody with the exception of the Tennessee game, which, midweek Tennessee being a good team, that was a tough game for anybody to play. Splitting that Auburn game and them, I was happy with, but I just don't know how they keep us out of the number 1 seed, regardless of controversy of who should be playing or not be playing. I know we'll talk about that in a minute. But I do think we're a 1 seed, and hopefully we get to pick where we play. And think somebody was mentioning to me Birmingham's one of the regionals. I'm like, yeah, let's take the Birmingham tournament and just drive on the bus every day for the game, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that'd be awesome if they got to play in Birmingham. Shoot,
Yeah,
I might even go to a game with you if they did that.
that's right. That's right.
Um,
Yeah, but yeah, I think that they definitely have the best argument at this point for the overall number one seed because of the head-to-head win against Houston. I think that
mhm.
disqualifies Houston for the position, and also
Mm-hmm.
we've seen Purdue kind of have a late season slide.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And, you look at the losses, Gonzaga early. I mean, Gonzaga's always going to be tough. UConn, I mean, they're a solid team. The confusing one's the Oklahoma game,
Yeah,
which
that's
the
kind of the
Oklahoma
outlier.
game, the Oklahoma game, let's talk about it. It was after all the legal stuff was going on. And of course, now we found out there was more behind the scenes than we even knew about in the public eye. And you could kind of tell that team, like, after all that stuff came out, after that big win, we just kind of skin of our teeth, and it was just, you could just see they were exhausted, like they were just tired. They just been through so much. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of like when Alabama played against Clemson in football back in, I think it was 2016 season, Trevor Lawrence. Like, that football team just looked tired. And even some of the players, like after the season came out, and said we were just worn out. Like, we just, like, yeah, we showed up, yeah, we gave our best effort, but like we were just tired. And I think that Oklahoma game was just a series of bad events. They were tired and they were wore out, and they didn't really care about being in Norman that weekend. So and I think the voters kind of looked at it the same way.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, and that's why they didn't get punished for that one. And from what I've heard, Oklahoma is actually kind of a tough place to play basketball. I've heard that's kind of a tough, venue. So that was
Well,
definitely one that you could see them losing, but definitely not the way they did.
and that Oklahoma team too is kind of the kryptonite of this Alabama team, and it's kind of one of the reasons Auburn has played us tough each year, or each game this season. But like, if you've got a big man, a solid big man, we've got Bentnico, which is 7 foot tall, but he weighs 100 pounds. But if you've got a solid big man that can handle his weight in the paint, and you get somebody hot at three, unless we're shooting our normal three game, we're going to get freaking run out of the court. So that's kind of what happened to us at Oklahoma. That's some of what happened at Tennessee. I think, that's what happened with the Zag. So, I just hope we, being the number one overall seed, we line up well, and it puts us in better position. But you get down into the Elite Eight, Final Four, we're going to find a team that's going to be, set up that way.
Yeah, I mean, Purdue would be one that would be interesting to watch how they could defend Ivy, because I mean that's just a great force inside. And if Purdue had like a couple other players that were even somewhat in his hemisphere, I would say they would be the favorite this year. But the problem they have is that Ivy's just kind of, it begins and ends with him almost with them.
Right. And that's the thing, we were talking about off camera earlier, is like Brandon Miller is the butt naked truth. I mean, he is the real deal. He's a lottery pick. I mean, he's wonderful, but he can go cold and other guys step up, which is very nice. And that's something, as an Alabama basketball fan, I'll tell you, we're if you're in Alabama, if you're a true, like a Hunter Johnson, you're a glutton for punishment to be a true Alabama fan, basketball fan first, football second, because like the Tennessee game we were talking about, I didn't even turn that game on. I'm obviously embarrassed to say, but if you're like, why didn't you watch? I was like, I knew we were going to lose. I just knew the setup, the way it was all, midweek game in Knoxville. I just, the cards, the stars aligned, and I was right.
Man, this must be like the year of the greatest year to be a Tennessee fan, right? I mean, you get the win over Alabama in football at home, and then you get the basketball win at home. I'm sure there's some
Oh yeah.
trashy stuff going on in Knoxville right now.
It is. It's funny. My doctor down here is actually a Tennessee grad and a Tennessee fan, and I almost feel like he's Canadian, because it's like every time I see, he's like, "Oh, sorry about that win." I'm like, "Sorry about why? You should be celebrating, ecstatic that you beat Alabama." He's like, "I know, but y'all are so used to winning." I'm like, "Man, y'all got to get out of your fields. Like, y'all got to be proud of yourselves for a minute."
That's a weird Tennessee fan right there.
I know, right? Well, down here in deep South Alabama, you don't get many Tennessee. A lot more LSU chirpers around here than there are, Tennessee necessarily.
Yeah, I want to have that experience though. I still haven't been to Knoxville for a game, so I can see, if it really is everything that people put it out there for. Like that's like high on my list right now.
I've been to Knoxville once, and I'm sorry to any of your listeners that are Tennessee fans, but it is the ugliest campus in the SEC. It is terrible. The engineers or architects or whatever back in the 60s or whatever, when they were redesigning all their buildings, they ordered Tennessee orange brick. So every building is this like bland ass brick facade and whatnot. We went up there to play them in lacrosse when I was in Alabama in school, and I just we went to a couple bars and it was a fun party scene, so somewhat, but just the campus, just the look of it, I was just like, oh, this is vomit. Auburn has a prettier campus, if that means anything to you, Daniel, from a Bama fan.
Yeah, yes. With the experiences you've had in Auburn, Hunter, then I take that as a huge compliment because I know that if you were framing it on that, you wouldn't be saying good things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, Kayla has the same things to say about Knoxville. My wife has made very negative comments about the way it looks, and it's just not her saying.
No, no, not at all.
All right, so Hunter, before we get into your Mardi Gras exploits, I want to get your opinion as the biggest Alabama fan I know. Which to go into the Mardi Gras thing, I love how it's your picture of you out in front of the hound, wearing all your houndstooth stuff and at that bar. That was just epic. I was like, that is beautiful, Hunter. I love that you're wearing that and that.
He asked me the reporter asked me, he's like, "Do you have any pictures of the ring?" And I'm like, it was a basic wedding band, 5 millimeter. It was special to me, but it wasn't anything special or whatnot. And so I was just like skimming through Facebook pictures, trying to find something where I was like holding a cup or putting my hand, out there. And I found one where I was like in my Mardi Gras like sweatshirt. So I was like, okay, that'll work. And then I found the Alabama one. I was like, well, I'm gonna, yeah, I got too much Bama in me, so I'm gonna put that out there. Of course, I'm at Galette's. I've got a Galette's Yellowhammer cup. I was like, this is the quintessential Alabama fan. So
That was. I mean,
it worked out.
you repped hard on that one. All right. So, as the quintessential Alabama fan, how do you think that Alabama should have handled the Brandon Miller situation? I'm interested to hear this.
Yeah. So I've gone round and round on this, and of course, I talk about LSU buddies. They've jarred me about it and sent it out there. I don't know. It's such a funky situation. I mean, if the facts align, if it is true that they've got text message evidence of him saying I was headed here, they've got, from what I understand, they've got camera evidence of him already headed that direction before any of the text messages were received. The understanding I have is, Brandon was doing the responsible thing. He wasn't drinking that night. He was offering rides for people, the ones that were partying doing. From what I understand, he didn't even know the firearm was in the vehicle. And, I'll tell you from my own experience in college. I remember sophomore year one time I had some girls riding around me and we were riding to bars and, doing bad things or whatever. And I got home and I found a dime bag in the back of my truck. And I had not partaken in any of that dime bag. And heaven forbid I'd have gotten pulled over on the ride home. And there'd been that in the back seat of my truck. So, as my own, there is plausible deniability that something, a firearm, drugs, anything could have been left in the vehicle. Now, again, I don't know and maybe Brandon was trying to go there and trying to tell Miles, like, no, don't do it. Don't, get back over here, get in the car. And he just grabbed the gun and ran. Those are the things we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen players get suspended and kicked off the teams for much less. So I have to believe in my heart that it seems that they have everything lined up, that Alabama would be willing to risk the PR hit, the everything else, everything that would be. I mean, I don't believe a national championship or an SEC championship or any of that is worth what the mud Alabama's getting drugged through for this. So I believe they've handled it the best they could. Now, if we want to talk about Nate Oates and his PR, that's a whole different story. He's not done a good job of being diplomatic about it, and he's kind of overstepped some things. And like there was the pat down, you know, from the last, and that to me is like, how tone deaf was that? Like, even for Brandon and them to do that, like, how tone deaf are you? And like, as a coach, he should have seen that. Even if they were doing that, even when they knew that they were being investigated weeks earlier,
Yeah.
it should have been cut that out. Like, that's not even funny. Like, we don't even need to risk that. And to say that, oh, it's an MMA thing, or it's a prepared for takeoff, or whatever, that, you know, that should have been cut out. And some of the note stuff should have been, but I feel like the university, again, I'm trying to be political, did what they did with the information that was at hand. Now, if you read into Clay Travis, I mean, he is just
Well,
he
that's
is he is an angry elf about Alabama and this, and he's almost dedicated all of his tweets last week to Brandon Miller should be hung upside down. You know, outside of that, a lot of the noise I've kind of seen is kind of tapered off. And again, I go back to, if the authorities, the NCAA, if everybody else has looked into this too, I just can't imagine Alabama's just like, nah, put the blinders on, screw it, we're going for a championship. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Well, you know, from my perspective, and of course, I'm an Auburn fan, but I like to be fair about things like this. If you have all the facts as it's put out by his attorney, which of course that's a loaded thing right there, all the facts put out as his attorney, then I would agree that there's no reason, of course, that he should have any legal punishment, that he doesn't have any real culpability in my mind in this, in terms of he should be suspended for the rest of the season or anything like that. The only problem I have with it is I feel like it's almost impossible to me that Alabama didn't know all of this stuff way back that they had in January, because I feel like they definitely had to have known that. And I think what they should have done is just addressed it head on right when all this stuff happened. Just have a press conference, be like, listen, this player's off the team. We know he's getting charged. These other players were there, and we're not going to hide this fact. They were there, and, you know, Brandon Miller drove to go pick him up, but the gun was there unbeknownst to him because he was driving when he received the text message or whatever, and put it all out there. And maybe at that point, maybe consider sitting him for like a game or two in the middle of the season when it doesn't matter. And you just say, like, we don't condone this kind of behavior. We don't think that he's criminally culpable. We're not going to suspend him for the rest of the season. We need to teach him a lesson, him and Jaden Bradley. And you do that right then, and you get in front of the story. I think this is a way different situation right here. And that's kind of like, you know, I'm looking at it from the way, like, let's say this was with Auburn or Ole Miss. If this was happening, that's the way I would have liked for them to have handled it, I think.
Well, spoken like a true attorney. I mean, no, I agree with you. And you're right. If that was the facts they had, because I can't imagine they didn't know that from the word go. I can't imagine
that's the thing that's hard for me to get past.
Yeah, with the cameras, and because he had to have been being interviewed by the police before, when all this was going on, which is why I alluded to earlier, is like, I think there was distraction on the team. I think it wasn't just like, oh, bummer, our buddy did a stupid thing. I think it was like, oh, bummer, we were all kind of there that night and all kind of knew what was going on, and like, you know, and again, like I tell the story about buddies and stupid things they did, and, you know, stuff they left in cars. I mean, I never had a buddy hand a gun to another person and shoot somebody, but my God, my dad's in industrial construction. Some of the people I've met around there, I mean, they have guns and full cases of beer in their cooler and everything else. I mean, you know, not that I condone any of those things. So it's kind of like, I can see the deniability on Brandon Miller's part. That, like, I didn't know the gun was in there. I was trying to do the good thing. I was trying to go pick him up and get out of that situation, and they went rogue on me. Like, and I believe that's probably what went down. But yes, you're right. There should have been more like forthcoming. Look, we know about this. It shouldn't have been like, oh, by the way, we just got news that Brandon Miller is not going to be charged with anything. Like, wait, he was involved. Like, when I first got the email from my buddy, I was like, wait, what do you mean? Why was he involved? Like, he wasn't there. Like, what are you talking about? He had the gun. And because originally the story was like Brandon Miller drove the gun, like he got the call and bolted over.
Yeah, that's the way it was framed to begin with.
Yeah, and then it came back. It was like, no, he was already calling people. There's phone records. He was headed to go pick them up anyway. And like, I have to believe he was going and trying to get them out of that situation, and then it escalated. I mean, could you imagine you got a buddy and he's drunk and he's acting erratic, and you're telling him, no, 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 don't do something, and he takes off and does it anyway? I mean, I can tell you, I got plenty of buddies that have not listened to me when they were, under the influence or fired up about stuff. I mean, so I don't know. It's a nasty situation, but I believe as far as the authorities are concerned, it's over.
Yeah,
So I
think
don't think
too.
there's ever going to be like the authorities going to come back and reissue something. So, was it a PR nightmare? Yes. Did Alabama flub some things with the front end? Yes. But I don't think he's ever going to get suspended. I don't think he's ever off the team. I think he's going to complete the season. I think he's going to go to the NBA, and that's going to be the rest of the story. But yes, it was a nightmare. Now that you presented your idea, I'm like, yeah, he's actually right. We should have got out in front of it.
Yeah, man, I spent some time thinking about it, and I was like, that would have solved it to where even if you're Clay Travis or someone that's frankly has an agenda with it, you're not gonna. What can you say then? I mean, at that point, all the information's been presented. You've shown the appropriate level of contrition, control of the situation, and I don't think there would be any way you could question a move like that personally.
Mm-hmm. And I hate to say it, I think a lot of that falls on Nate Oates. And I think it falls on Nate Oates, and maybe Greg Burns should have got involved as the AD a little bit more, and maybe he wasn't. I mean, I can't imagine Greg Burns didn't know all these things too, but I think a lot of it falls on
all of them knew it.
And I think the fact that Nate Oates is winning right now, he's going to get a pass. But you give him a year or two, and he starts losing a bunch of basketball games, and more players having issues, then to talk about the great mighty process and Saban, I think had this been a Saban player, a football player, like you said, I think he would have immediately came out, and the man's a superstar professional. Speaking of Clay Travis always jokes and says, did we waste Nick Saban on football? Like what? What? He could be a CEO of a company. He could be a diplomat. He could be any of these things because he's just an incredible person.
I mean, I'll say this, having seen him speak in person last year at the Senior Bowl, especially when he was up there with Harsin, and I was seeing the comparison between the two of them, I was like, I mean, I get that people want to play for this guy, and I was thinking, like, if I was a high school student and even as ardent of an Auburn fan as I am, and he came in here and presented his pitch to me, I would, I'd probably think about it. Like, it's true. Like, I would think about it, and I think he definitely is the kind of person that whatever he did, he would be successful at, and I've thought before that if he ran for governor, I'd be interested to see who he went against. I would not say flat out that I would not vote for him. That's the way I would put it. Like, it would depend on who ran against him. Like, I would think about it.
But I've always told the joke that if you wanted to legalize gambling in the state of Alabama, Nick Saban would just need to give a speech about how to improve recruiting, and there'd be a special election next week. I mean, could definitely see that happening.
Well, Joe, so let me get your thoughts. How do you think Alabama should have handled the situation?
I mean, I can't really add probably a whole lot more than what's already been reported and discussed. I tend to kind of lean, Dan, towards what you explained. I think that was very well reasoned. I think the frustration, that people had is kind of twofold. One, because the information comes out kind of after the fact, you can't help but think, was something covered up and there's more to the story than we even know at this point. I think that second, it's the implication that nothing happened as far as, a penalty or any suspension or anything. He's just out there still playing and putting up big numbers and they're winning. And so I think that's been the frustration from a lot of outside people watching the situation. And so I definitely think, as you alluded to, Alabama, should have handled this a lot better.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, Hunter's right. The Nate Oates, he's been kind of aloof and he hasn't, doesn't seem like he doesn't really understand what's going on. And that's been one of the frustrating things. It seems like all this information's coming to him later, or it's just like he forgets about it, he doesn't care about it. It's one or the other, and you don't know really which one it is. And you hear him say things like, well, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Don't really want to say that when you have, a young mother getting murdered in this. And then that's your statement, is that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I feel like Nate Oates, and I think a lot of it is he just is a guy that's, he's a little bit like Saban. He's focused on what he does, but he isn't quite as artful as Saban is in terms of the way he like presents, these kind of things. And I don't think he's just got very great public relations training. I think that's like a big factor with it.
I agree.
All right. Well, Hunter, speaking of public relations training, I mean, you've been the talk of Mobile lately, man. I mean, it was funny. My wife sent me that article at work, and at first I was like, I'm too busy to read about some MOT person doing stuff, and then later I'm like, wait a minute, that's Hunter. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about your week lately with the media coverage you've gotten?
Sure. So I guess it all goes back to the beginning. So over the last year or so, I've lost around 60, 65 pounds or so. And that ring had, I think it was like a size 9 or so. And it was already starting to get loose. And it was to a point like when I was bathing my children, I would take it off so it wouldn't like fall off in the tub or go down the drain. And, I was just being a little precautious about it. And that particular night, we rode on Saturday. We ride the Saturday before Fat Tuesday, the night after y'all ride, and it was really cold that day. It was just abnormally cold. When you get cold, you kind of dehydrate a little bit. Everything kind of thins up. And I was riding on my float, and I'd reached down to grab a throw, and the ring just slid down to the floor. And I was thinking to myself, like, maybe I should stick this in my pocket. And I don't know, I guess the devil on the other side was like, it ain't gonna fall off your finger. Like get real, just put it back on, throw your throws. Well, we started coming around the corner in front of Moe's, and it just kind of dawned on me. I was like, wait, we're in the last like quarter of this, you know, parade, and I looked down, and I still have like a third of my throws or more, and I was like, well, crap, I gotta start unloading stuff. So the line from the thing that so many MOTs have said should be our theme next year, but I was literally reaching down and double fisting moon pies. I was just grabbing moon pies 2 hands at a time and flinging them. And I felt it. I just felt it. I looked up. I saw the glisten in the light and was like, "Oh no, that's gone." And you can't jump off the float. That's a major fine.
Oh
The
yeah.
cops will arrest you. I mean, there's no way I was going to be able to run off and go try to look for it. And I just kind of sat there thinking, like, well, I'm going to have to tell my wife I lost my wedding ring. And now I've got to throw all these throws and I'm somewhat intoxicated. So it was just kind of like this, like, oh, man, I feel like Charlie Brown. And anyway, we get to the convention center and, I'm kind of sitting there, having a drink or two. And then Ginger walks up. I was like, look, I'm sorry. Yeah, here's what happened. And she was very cool about it. I mean, she's lost some jewelry as well. We've had to get insurance policies because of it.
Oh yeah.
And so anyway, Daniel, you know my wife. You went to high school with her, law school with her and everything. But she is just like a social media like influencer savant. Like
I'm
she
amazed
just
how quickly she can post things on social media. I mean, she hits it. It's like quick.
and she's not only that, like she basically frames it up that like people are like, y'all are always on the go. I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, well, some of that's by design, some of it's to make us look and our brand look, like we're always on the go, but we really are. And she put the post out there, hey, my husband lost his ring, so on and so forth. And the Mobile Mass picked it up. And that's what really kind of like set fire to it. And then the Mass posted it. And then after the Mass posted, at one point, I think it had 250 reshares.
Mhm.
And the Fox 10 guy actually called the office because I guess he didn't know any other way to try to locate us. And I guess he found Ginger on Facebook, saw the beach ball properties, called in, and I called back. And it's also funny, Daniel, we're supposed to be in secret societies, right?
Yeah,
And
I
right
thought
before
that too. Like during this whole thing.
and then I got thought about, I was like, I'm totally like at one point I was like, well, maybe I could put a mask on for the interview. And then nobody's like mentioned fines or anything, but if they fine me, whatever, I'll pay the fine. It's kind of funny. But like they interviewed me, and the thing is, you're with your listeners. I don't even know if I should encourage this, but if you can go find the Fox 10 Facebook post, the comments are just brutal, man. People are just like the keyboard warriors. Like it was like people like saying they're like, there's no way I lost on the parade route. I was cheating on my wife. And then people making comments like, if I lost that much weight, she must not be a good cook. Like it's just like, you're like
You
what,
should have hate in your heart to post things like
what is wrong
that.
with people, But the silver lining, the good thing to the story is that Ginger, I have another ring. Ginger had been wanting to upgrade my ring anyway. She just wanted me to get something different because I got the most simple, just white gold, cheapest ring I could get at the time. And she's like, you need to get a little flair. So this was the opportunity. If your viewers can see, I got a little inlay of diamonds in there. So, people have seen it like, oh, you found your ring? I'm like, no, well, I upgraded my ring and I had to pay for it. So, but to expand on that too, Daniel, it's just, my float has just felt like the cursed float. I mean, this year I lost my ring. We didn't get our costumes, or half the parade didn't get their costumes. My float didn't get costumes. Last year it broke down. The year before was COVID. The year before we rained out and we rode behind the IMs who were delayed 2 hours. So by the time we rode, we literally I think finished the route at midnight and there was nobody on the route. So I'm
Mhm.
like, when am I going to have a straight up ride on this float? But it's still Mardi Gras. It's still a good time. It's going to be a good story. We're going to tell for years, I'm sure.
Well, Hunter, I don't know what pull you have in this secret organization that you're in, but I think it would be a great theme for next year if you just did rings. Like you got the rings of power float, the ring, little girl crawling around the wall. There's so many rings you could go with that. You could definitely fill a whole parade with the ring theme.
I, I could see that. The only thing that I'm running up against is this is the 75th anniversary. So I'm assuming the 75th year of MOT, they're probably going to do some elegant, thing,
Oh
which
yeah.
I thought this year was a little goofy. It was Monster of a Time, and we were all like monster themes. Our float was a werewolf, there was a Frankenstein, there was a headless horseman, Godzilla, different stuff like that. And truthfully, you asked about stroke. I've got the least amount of stroke. I'm in Orange Beach. I don't make it to membership meetings. I don't think a single person on the exec board could point me out in a crowd, which they might now because they've seen me on the news or whatnot. But that would be funny. Either something about the ring or again. I think double fisted moon pies would be a great thing.
Do double, yeah, a double theme. That would work.
Yeah.
All right, Hunter. Well, it's been great having you on the show again, as always. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Beach Ball Properties and how to contact you and what you got to rent right now?
Absolutely. Well, right now it's slim pickings. We're getting into spring break, so there's not much left on the inventory. But since the last time we've talked, I do want to brag that we were the recipients of the 2022 VRMA Vacation Rental Company of the Year. So VRMA, thank you, buddy. So VRMA is Vacation Rental Management Association. So it's the equivalent to what the ABA is, the American Bar Association. They're the, help with regulation, help with just being a authority for, your type of business, right? So there's 17,000 vacation rental managers out there in the country. We were nominated. We put in a video submission, and we were chosen to be the winners. Since that time, it's been just blowing up like crazy. We have over 250 properties now. I think we're about 80-20 condos to houses. So we've got tons of houses now. We just picked up a massive 8-bedroom, 8-bath with a pool on the deck right there in the heart of Orange Beach on the beach. Super pumped about that one. So tons of options. Anything you're looking for little one bedroom condos for you and your sweetie, or if you're looking for an 8-bedroom on the beach for everybody to stay. Our website's super easy to use. It's